We need a beat.
All right, today on the Marketing Playable Characters podcast, we have Mika Hakimi, we have Josh, and we have myself, John. And today we're talking about going from sim to real racing because that seems to be the real hot button type of esports thing that's going on. I mean, lots of people talked about I can play Dota 2, but kind of doesn't translate to a life after Dota 2 unless you're going to stay within the game or go into game development or community management at Twitch or something. You know, Counter Strike, I think these hands, they don't move as fast as they used to anymore, so maybe not there either. But, sim racing to real racing is a real thing. Like, they just had that movie come out, Gran Turismo, not long ago, maybe a couple months ago. And that was all about Jan Mardenborough going from Gran Turismo 5 on a wheel to a real life Nissan contracted driver. I don't know whether he's still with Nissan, but that's a pretty cool thing. So I just want to ask Mika to introduce yourself a little bit, going through what you're doing and all that kind of stuff so that we can get right into the topic of conversations.
Sure. Okay, so I'll introduce myself. My name is Mika Hakimi. I'm 20 years old. I've been doing racing since I was 17. And I started from sim racing actually. So unlike other racing drivers my age in the country, I never did any level of go-karting, whether semi-professional or professional. I did sim racing when I was 16. That's when I got my first setup. That's when I first started joining these esports competitions and stuff. And then by the time I was 17, I think it was in August 2020, that's when Toyota reached out to me. They were like, hey, we see these competitions that you've been joining. We have a program where we're taking in young drivers to join, to sort of like start a career in car racing. We're taking 6 drivers, 4 go-karters and 2 sim racers, and your name popped up as a sim racer. So, that's how I got signed by Toyota back in 2020. That's how my journey started. And it's kind of cool that it all started from playing video games in my room.
I love that. So, okay, I
That's
just want to go
amazing.
right back to that. Who was the other sim racer? Was it Nakib?
Yeah, it was Nakib. So me
Okay,
and Nakib,
so
we were both signed by Toyota in 2020.
So for Josh's information, the only reason why I know Nakib is because when I bought my car,
Mm.
I went and Googled like how many people or YouTubed how many people have that same car in Malaysia. So at the time, there was one video of a Club Sport GTI in Malaysia, white color, going around Sepang under 240, which is pretty quick for like just a standard front wheel drive kind of like performance vehicle, right? So that I reached out to him, and by virtue of that, I got to know his father, Aslan, and all that kind of stuff. And then further down the line, I go for a track day, and I'm sharing a pit with Mika. So he and his buddy
Oh,
helped me
okay.
lower the tire pressures of my car. I set the fastest lap I've done around Sepang ever, which is just not very fast. It's pretty slow, since because I was like, I mean, full admission, right? Like, I don't have the racer vision, so when I drive on my sim rig, it's just 34 inches wide, right? So it doesn't really simulate the full field of view, which is why I think race car drivers are amazing, right? Like, they can see the braking board out of the corner of their eye or a braking marker out of the corner of their eye, but
Yeah.
already be looking at the apex. Whereas I'm just going like, where the fuck is the corner marker? Where's the braking marker? I don't want to die. So, but yeah, it was a really cool story how we ended up meeting and all that kind of stuff. It was quite random.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, like it's one of those. I see it all the time. Like Lando Norris, Alex Albon, Charles Leclerc, George Russell, all these F1 drivers. They're all like Twitch stars at one point doing MCO. So
Mhm.
these F1 guys would go online, race each other, and all that kind of stuff. It's all on sim rigs that people like us can buy.
Yep.
Obviously, they have the creme de la creme with the stuff. But I want to know, Mika, how did you get started in sim racing? Like, did someone give
Ooh.
you a wheel for like Christmas or I don't know, Mariah or something?
Pretty much, but it wasn't for Christmas. So back in 2019, in March, Asia GT came to Sepang, I think for like one of their races. And Race Room had a booth there where they set up like 4 simulators, and then you can come on. try, put some laps on the board, see where you end up on the leaderboard. So I was there as a spectator, and then I saw the simulators there. I thought to myself, oh, this is kind of cool. I'll just put on a few laps just for fun. Never done sim racing before, might as well try. And then I was lucky that there's this sim racing team called Blue Steel Racing. Their whole
Blue
team was
Steel.
there basically. Yeah, they were there. The drivers from that team were also taking part in that race room event, and then they saw that I was quite good for someone that has never done sim racing. So they were like, "Hey, you seem pretty good. You should, there's a lot of competitions out there. You can do pretty well in these competitions. Come join our team. We'll lend you some. They didn't give me the equipment; they lent it to me to join these competitions. So they're like, "Okay, we'll lend you some stuff to join these competitions, and then see how you go from there." So that's how I started. Just met these 3-4 bunch from Blue Steel Racing, and then now we've actually grown quite a lot. Gotten our own sponsors. We even have a EG6 track car that we're using to sort of, because we do coaching at Blue Steel Racing. So when we coach people on the sim, once they're ready, we're like, hey, time for you to go on our track car around Sepang. Uh, so now, I just met these 3-4 people from Blue Steel Racing, like 3-4 years ago, and then now, basically, if I didn't meet them, I don't think I would have even been joining any sim racing competitions, and I
Rad.
wouldn't have even been noticed by Toyota. So that's how the journey started. It's crazy how things like start so small and then snowball into some bigger thing
Yeah.
down the line.
I was gonna ask
Yeah, that's
because
crazy.
yeah, sorry, Josh, go ahead. Did you have something?
No. Just yeah.
Yeah, so
Go
a
on.
lot of the times I always feel like it's always like dad. Dad was a racer. That's the story. Dad was a
Yeah.
racer at some point in his life, and then it sort of trickled down effect. Somehow the son gets
Mhm.
pushed into it, or daughter gets pushed into
Yeah.
it. So this is just was your dad ever into racing, or this was just your thing?
Actually, he's worked in racing for quite long, but
Oh,
he's never brought me on board on any other stuff. He's always been like, of course, like racing is very expensive, so he
it
never really
is.
had the funding. We couldn't even like, get a sim on our own. So, racing has never really been an option. But he always told me, if you want to go out and chase it, if you want to find your sponsors, email a few people, network a little bit, go to the track to network with some guys, you do it. It's something you have to learn on your own if this is something you want to chase. So that's always been something that he's like put down on me. And I wanted to see if I could chase this sort of like dream or whatever. So I did quite a lot of it on my own, but he was very supportive. He never stopped to say, hey, maybe you should focus more on your studies, or maybe this is getting too expensive or whatever. He helped buy my helmet and my gloves and stuff when I first got signed by Toyota. So he's always been there to help when I need some help, but he's also been there to sort of been like, hey, you got to learn to do some of these things on your own,
Oh, that's cool. I that's like, oh man, that's like I mean having a supportive family for something as something that might be as unpopular as motor racing. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of
Mm,
like bad associations with it, right? Like people say like it's
yeah.
dangerous. It's you get into a pileup, you don't know where you end up.
Hmm.
Then they watch a couple of Macau Grand Prix with TCR cars, and they see how badly those crashes end up.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
like suddenly mom saying like no and dad saying no, and and then people creating excuses like Lawrence Stroll and his wife for
Yeah,
Lance
exactly.
Stroll. So Lance Stroll's a F1 driver, Josh, if you didn't know, and he's like born into money. So he's one of those
Hmm.
things where when he's doing badly, his parents are like, no, you don't have to do this anymore if you don't want to. I'm like, where's the passion?
I see.
So what's that like? Like, was the transition very difficult? I mean, like because Blue Steel obviously found you, and
Hmm.
you guys probably go out there and market together, right? I mean,
Hmm.
that's gotta be so. It's like go out there, present yourselves, present a few different, I don't know, personality decks and stuff like that, just to sort of get people an idea of what you are.
Yeah, basically, that's pretty much how it is. In racing, it's very important who you network with, and then when you do connect with these people, they need to know the range of your capabilities. So, of course, if these people have already seen you on track and stuff, it helps a lot. But if these people are also involved in sim racing and they know, like for example, when I do Le Mans Virtual, which is a sim racing competition, in that in that championship, I race against people like Max Verstappen. So when you do competitions like that
Ah,
and you do well, so like in January, there was the 24 hours of Le Mans Virtual.
Yeah.
And in that race, I got the fastest lap. So when you have,
What?
yeah, so
Were
when
you
you
guys
race
racing
against,
hybrid twos or I mean
it was LMP2. So and then
bro. Fastest
so
lap and Verstappen's in the
yeah,
game. Was it when he crashed?
exactly.
It's not when his game crashed, right?
No, I mean he did have some problems, but I mean fastest lap is fastest lap,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I mean of course when you do there's also a lot of different competitions that you can join. I joined a lot of competitions with Jensen Button's Rocket Sim Sport team. So I joined his sim racing team,
Okay.
and then I represent his team, join a few competitions here and there. So these kind of things, they help build up your reputation, your credibility. So then when you do reach out to a few teams or a few brands, they know how good you are. So Blue Steel helps me a lot with that. So most of my time spent with Blue Steel is mainly in the local region, like local competitions and local coaching sessions and stuff. So they help quite a lot for me to sort of like keep my head afloat, basically, in racing.
Okay, that's pretty cool stuff. I mean, like Jensen be in the same race. So it's all
Yeah,
in race room, right? Or is it R Factor 2?
R Factor 2.
Okay, so R Factor 2, Josh, I mean like in the sim racing world, there are like only a handful of games, like not even a handful of games, right? So most people
mm,
are playing Assetto Corsa Competizione, which is it's like a GT3 mimic game. It
mm,
mimics real life GT3 cars on GT3 tracks.
mhm.
Then there's also what Mika was talking about, which was
R
R
Factor
Factor
2.
2, yeah, around Le
Mm.
Mans, the circuit, which is the Circuit de la South. And
I see.
there's also iRacing,
iRacing.
yeah.
Yeah, iRacing
So
is quite a famous one.
so if you want to talk about predatory behavior, iRacing and R Factor 2 haven't been updated for eons, but yet
Yeah.
people just give them money because they become official games of these esports.
Yeah. There's
You
also
know,
the new
Mm.
one coming out by the same developers of R Factor 2. It's called
correct.
Le Mans Ultimate. Yeah, that a lot of people are really looking out for
I
that one.
am first in line. Let me know. Add me on Discord. I'll be there trying not to crash into everybody.
Yeah, I mean, me and my team we're part of the beta stuff for that one, so I can't really
Oh,
disclose
that's cool.
much. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, you got in on the beta?
Yeah, because we're quite an active team. So they reach out to a lot of pro R Factor 2 teams, obviously to test out some stuff with the game, because
Mm,
it is based
mhm.
on R Factor 2 anyway. So I do know some small stuff about the game, but I think nothing I can disclose, unfortunately.
You may just sign NDAs and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Especially after
Yeah,
that
of course.
little.
Especially when there's so much hype around the game now, they
Mm,
don't want people
Mm,
yeah.
to disclose a lot of stuff. But it's looking really nice.
What was it? There was this whole drama with Rennsport as well. Rennsport's German for
Yeah,
race sport or motorsport or something.
yeah,
They
Red
said,
Sport stealing our Factor 2
yeah,
code or
correct.
something. Yeah.
So I was like, oh, that's all this like industrial espionage kind of stuff, like or people not
Hmm.
paying enough credit to the developer of the original physics or the game engine. That's a
Yeah.
big deal.
mm.
Cool. Okay, so tell me, I just want to know a little bit about. Oh man, I got so many questions right now. Like, I'm not sure which way to go, but I was just like, in the current the sim racing scene, right? Like,
Hmm.
I mean, in your case, obviously you had talent, you pushed it, and they were like, yeah, okay, you know what, we need you here. You're gonna be
Hmm.
part of the team, etc.
Yep.
Right? But like, for everyone, Mika, there's probably 1,000 other kids who are probably not doing the same lap times, but they're quick,
Hmm.
right? They're obviously
Yeah.
quicker than 43-year-old me, right? So, like, do you think that the laddering is hard too, or are there a lot of like local businesses trying to get people in?
Yeah, there's it's actually growing quite a bit because of course once you see it as a trend, these sim racing drivers getting into real racing, also for the brands that want to invest in the sport. Previously, just putting a logo on a race car wasn't really so profitable, but when there's a story of bringing a gamer into a race car, now suddenly you get a lot more attention. So locally there's been a lot of teams, a lot of companies that wanted to push something like this. And for the individuals, a lot of people are now really trying to get in. So, like for example, Race Room, they are opening up more and more sim racing centers, and then a lot of people that go to these sim racing centers, they'd really like to know how they can advance onto the real car racing scene, like they've seen examples like me and stuff. So I would say it's actually really good for the country, even because now the motorsport is seeming more accessible to everybody here, and more people are gonna invest in it. But of course, it takes you need to the toughest thing is you can't really just hop rock up to a sim racing center, set a few laps, and then boom, you're signed by Nissan or by Toyota or whatever. The hard thing is you really need to put yourself in the right place at the right time. So that extends to who you connect with, what competitions you join and stuff, and then where you go from there. So that I would say that's the key thing that a lot of people are missing, because when I started out, I really deliberately picked out like where I wanted to position myself, as in where I wanted to be seen, where I wanted to be talked about in terms of which competitions I joined and stuff, just so that I could put myself in the right spot to be noticed, by a big brand like either Toyota, or you never know who's gonna fund your racing career. It could just be like an engine oil company at the end of the day.
Okay.
So yeah, where you position yourself is very important. Because if you're not doing karting, sim racing can become a very good platform for you to put yourself on the map. So that's why positioning and where you put yourself is very important.
That was a lot of information, but okay, I understand. One of the things was the transition difficult? Like, I'm sure like stepping into the Toyota Vios Cup car, like it's just sort of like, I don't know whether it's like a holy shit moment, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, now I gotta do this for real, and I'm gonna feel every
To me,
bump and bruise,
my
right?
holy shit moment was when I saw the car. I was like, oh my god! Usually it's just you click a button and then you're in the cockpit already.
Yeah.
So when the mechanics are pulling the car up into the garage and you see the thing coming in, you're like, god damn, this is like real now. So
What's
yeah,
that like,
but
man? Yeah, take us through
yeah,
that.
it's crazy at first, because like I mean, to me, even because of course I was signed by Toyota, so they had like a whole media day where they were taking pictures of us signing the contracts and stuff. They got their CEOs, CMOs or whatever, all at the HQ. And then upon arrival, they put the car that you're going to race right at like the doorstep. So
Yeah.
as soon as you walk into the compound, you see your car, you're like, god damn. As a 17-year-old kid who was just playing video games like a few months back, and then now you're seeing a car that you're about to race, it's like really mind-blowing at first. I think looking back, it was like it's really hard to describe like how it feels. And then when they finally bring you to the racetrack to drive the cars and stuff, of course, I think it's because mentally I was quite prepared for it, as in like I wasn't really scared. Like I think maybe I can't say the same about a lot of drivers that are starting out. Like some sim racers, when you put them into a race car, if they're not mentally prepared, when they drive out the pits, they might still be very scared and shaky. But for me, when I was being belted in, my mind was already set on what I wanted to do and how good I wanted to, like show myself. Like I wanted to show everybody like how good I was, right? So the moment I started turning the wheel, everything became like natural to me. To me, it didn't even feel like there was any like sort of mental limitation. Like I just drove it however I would drive it on the sim. It's just that after 2-3 laps, my body was like, oh, it's pretty hot without the aircon in my room.
Yeah, for sure.
So was there like any form of training that they
Oh
put you
yeah.
guys through this?
Definitely there was some sort of training. They had like, a sort of light program for us, so that we didn't like pass out inside the car or something like that, just some basic stuff. But yeah, I mean, to me, in terms of how I needed to adapt, what I needed to learn, it was all skills that I had to teach myself or learn some other way like on the sim anyways. It's just that the G-forces and the physical heat and everything, all that you had to sort of try and get used to as quickly as you can. a lot of people are like, oh, when you go from the simulator and you step into the real car, you're gonna be really shocked by the G forces and stuff. But to me, it's like I don't know. I don't know which sim racer actually feels that way when they step into a real car.
Right.
Because like the moment, yeah, because like to me, the moment I feel the G's or whatever, I'm just like, it's an added tool. On the sim, I have to drive fast without the G force helping me. Like it would have been great if I can get the G force to help me so I can feel the slides a little bit more. So on the sim, you're used to having to beat, because when you're doing sim racing, you're racing against people all over the world. If you do karting at a high level here, you're only racing against the best in Malaysia. But if you do sim racing
Good point.
competitions, if you do sim racing competitions, you're racing against the best in the world, because like you're racing against everybody out there. So there's a higher level that you have to achieve. You have to be a lot better than if you were just racing locally, but you have lesser tools. You don't have the G's, you don't have a lot of like these stuff helping you out and stuff. So when you step into a real car, you get the G forces, you get a more natural feel. It helps quite a lot, to be honest. In terms of what you need to learn, is just exactly how you would apply it on the sim. It's just that one or two things to get used to as you step into a real car, and then after that, it's pretty much exactly the same as the sim.
I was just about to ask how you mentioned earlier that you had like counterparts who were previously kart racing. That how did they feel about having someone like you and your other colleague who came in as a sim racer? Did they feel like it was, hey, this is our territory? Why you encroaching on us?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think in the first year, that was for me and Akib, that was the toughest thing that we had to deal with, because you also have to remember, when you're two sim racers out of like 20-30 races on track, you hit one guy, they're going to be like, oh, that's because in the game they can restart, so they don't care if they hit people.
Damn, that's
So
savage.
we got a lot of that in our first year. Even if they're the ones that hit us, they're gonna be like, oh, these gamers, just because they can reset in the game, they think they can hit people like that in real life. It's really dumb. Yeah, it is. Sport is like that. You always get people. I mean, to me personally, I like it when people do that, because I like just being in people's head. I like it when people run their mouth about me. But that's me. I can't. A lot of drivers. I've seen some like drivers like last year as well. The moment they get any sort of criticism, they crumble. It's just that me personally, I kind of like. I like to agitate people as well. Like once I hear that they're like saying these stuff about me, I like to like fuel it just so that it gets them riled up a bit more.
Yeah. It just makes people mad, right?
Yeah. I like, so when people start talking bad about me, and it came naturally as a sim racer, because I mean, you have to remember, these people that came from a karting background, or at least from track day backgrounds and stuff, they invested a lot of their own money. So when they see some sim racer who spent like 1% of what they spent, and then now they're on the same level as you, and they're beating you as well, they start to feel quite inferior, and they start to want to talk bad about you. So for me, even before I turned a lap in a practice session in TGR, I was already getting a lot of criticism. But as soon as I found out, I tried to like fuel it even more, which got me in a bit of trouble. But like I didn't really care. I kind of liked the agitation. But yeah, when you're a sim racer, you're doing everything at you didn't invest as much money as they did. Definitely invested more time, I would say. But these people who spent more money than you, they always feel like they want to compensate, basically. So whenever you're beating them, they try to say this and that. It was very tough at first, and I can imagine that in a few years from now, as more sim racers transition into real racing, that might actually be a really thick filter on its own, because the people, there's going to be a lot of drivers who are going to be even younger. Because when I started, I was 17 years old. There's going to be in a few years a lot of sim racers that are 14, 15 years old going through this system, and then they have freaking 40-year-olds talking shit about them. They might not deal with it quite well. So I think people forget how mentally tough racing actually is. It's one mistake can actually cost you an entire race. It's not like football, where if you lose possession, you can just chase back after it. Sometimes in racing, you dip a wheel in the grass and then you go from leading to like all the way at the back.
Don't I know
So
it?
and that's just the driving part. racing is, I would say, a lot of racers have said it as well, like racing is 60-70% like what you do outside of the car, because it's not like you can, like football, you can go, even in your room, you can kick a ball to just, practice and stuff. But racing, you really have to go out there and do some laps on the track and stuff. So racing, a lot of the work is mental. It's like 60-70% of the work is all the mental work outside of the car itself. And as more sim racers get into the car racing scene in a few years time, I think them being able to deal with how mentally strong you have to be in the sport and how much you have to face criticism, that would be a great filter on its own, I think.
Yeah, I mean, okay, going back to that, because you said sort of the mental aspect of being outside the car, right? Like before you get into the car, is that more on the lines of like mental focus, and not so much like mental focus and like mental stamina, rather than sort of having to be like mentally prepared or like about, or being like having an engineer's mind about setup and car and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's basically that, because like when you're racing, uh especially when you start to need to have a lot in your arsenal to beat a lot of the drivers out there, you have to think a lot about like vehicle dynamics. Like every time you're taking a corner, like how much you can how much of the weight transfer you can manipulate. And then when the tires start to wear out, you got to change your driving style a little bit. So every single lap, at every corner, you're thinking about so many things. So your mental capacity has to be really strong. But a lot of drivers also outside of the racetrack, they spend a lot of time visualizing stuff. A lot of self-thinking, a lot of visualization, and you have to be really strong in this aspect as well. And that's not even factoring in all the criticism
The
that I
social media damage.
yeah, because if you think about a whole race weekend, let's say if you take a Sunday race, for example, you're only racing for like an hour, but you're at the track for like a good like 6 hours or something.
Yeah, I can
You're doing
imagine.
a lot of media stuff. Yeah, you're working with your mechanics, with your race engineer, with your team manager, with everybody else running the whole team. You gotta put up a face for the media, for the cameras, for the socials and everything, and then all of that you have to do all in that like 6 hour day, and then only you're basically only judged on that 1 hour of driving that you do, even though you've been doing like
Yeah.
you've been working nonstop 6 hours at the track. So as a driver, your mental capacity has to be really strong, and of course your mental focus and everything else, mental stamina, all falls into just that mental capacity part, like how much you can withstand and withhold. I think you see it at a pretty high level as well. Like if you look at F1, once you start to look for it, you can see like which drivers sort of have a mental edge over the others. Like if you look at when Bottas and Hamilton were teammates, there were some races where Bottas really looked better than Hamilton, but Hamilton was just there every single weekend. Bottas just had like 1 or 2 weekends where he could put everything together, but other weekends he would struggle to be consistent and stuff. So, it's stuff like that. Maybe his mental capacity is not as high as Hamilton. So in terms of capability, is there, but if your mental capacity isn't strong, you probably can't carry the same level of performance at every single race. So you can see it everywhere. If you look for it, you'll really see it in every single racing category. That's how strong the mental game is in racing. That's why they call it high-speed chess.
I agree.
No, I think that's amazing for someone at your age to see this. It's so insightful, right? Like for you to be able to spot, and it's amazing that it's not just all about skill, because like you mentioned, between Bottas and also Hamilton, it's skill wise, I mean, both of them can do it, right? But it's like you rightly mentioned, it's mental toughness, mental steel to be able to do it, that edge, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
I was just thinking, because I mean, I've been a big fan of Kobe Bryant since he came into the league when I was like 16 years old or something. But one of the things he said is they call it Mamba mentality, right? It's not like, Michael Jordan has the, and then I took offense to it mentality, and that's what drove him. You know what I mean? Like, I'm offended by you, and now I must put you in your place. But Kobe had a different sort of thing, right? He's like, you know what? I'm just gonna outwork everybody.
Yeah.
If I outwork
Kobe's
everybody,
like
I'm gonna be confident that I'm gonna win. You know what I mean? Like, and it's one of those things that I see is so not very often in sports nowadays. Like when I see like our current badminton shuttler, the Chinese guy, I can't remember his name.
Lizzie Jia, is it?
Yeah. And he was
Mm.
just going like, "Oh, I need to take a break." I'm like, "Get the
Yeah.
f out of here! Are you kidding me? You just started, bro. Like you got to go out there and be a killer. You know, you want to go out there and
Yeah.
take people's lunch, and that's what I want to see. You know, and then interesting story. I actually chanced upon a. This is really off topic, but a badminton YouTube channel,
Mm-hmm.
and it was about badminton beef between Indian national player and a Spanish national player, female. Both of them
Uh-huh.
were females, and it was mad. I really thought they were gonna start like whacking each other with the racket and all that because like, it. I mean, truth be told, I mean the Spanish player was being super annoying, but I get it. You know, she's trying to get into people's heads, right? And like,
Yeah.
it's a mental edge, right? Like, why is Sharapova scream every time she smashes that thing, man? Like, that's just her game
Yeah.
plan, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, I think a lot of things that I love that yeah, Josh, you're absolutely right. I mean, like Mika, for someone your age to have this sort of mentality
Mm.
is so few and far between. I see a lot of kids give up real
Oh,
fast, right?
yeah. Even in
And
sim racing, I see a lot of kids give up really quickly because the thing about sim racing is every single competition is easily accessible. You just have to be good enough for it. So let's say you're someone who's capable of joining even the toughest competitions. That means as long as you can stay up for it, because the best competitions are European based, right? So you gotta do
oh
like race
gosh,
starts at like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
that's like three
So
days gone of your time, right? To be up that
yeah,
late.
exactly. So, to me, I've seen a lot of drivers like the time has been a filter on its own because I've seen some drivers where like you ask them to race at 9 p.m. and they're like the best driver in the region. Ask them to race at 3 a.m. They can't even like brake at the right spots. So
Yeah.
that's already like one filter. But going back to the competitions and stuff, like let's say you do what's the biggest go-kart racing series here? Yami, I think the X30 or something
I
like that.
have honestly, I don't. I mean, go-karting is just something not on my radar, right? Like,
Yeah, but
yeah.
the thing is, even if you do the biggest go-kart tournament in Asia, the best drivers in Europe won't even look at it. So, that's, because the best drivers in Europe are doing the best competitions in Europe. So if you do the highest level of, go-kart racing in Asia, you're still only comparing yourself to like a pretty small sample size. But sim racing, some of the competitions that I join are against like F3 drivers, F1 drivers,
Yeah.
and Max is insanely good on the sim. It's actually disrespectful how good he is on the sim, man. Like, because if you look at his team Redline, those guys are getting like 5K, 6K USD a month just to sim race for like 12 to 14 hours a day.
What the hell, man?
Max hops on off of a busy year of winning the F1 title and
Yeah.
is quicker than all his teammates. It's disrespectful how good he is.
My
But
goodness.
that's just how talented Max is. So when you race against these people who not like, like if you look at Max Verstappen's team, they're all full-time sim racers. They have their day job is sim racing. They get
Oh
paid to
my
do sim
goodness.
racing. So their capability is really, really high. And for you to beat these guys, you need to not only learn what like what they know or how they're that good and stuff, but you've also got to develop a mentality that can topple theirs because they've got a really ruthless mentality. You can't shake them. Like you can't even agitate them. They are so strong with their mental game that it requires you to learn something completely different just to beat these guys, which is how I learned like what I know right now in terms of mentality, in terms of like how much you have to work for it and stuff. Because by joining a lot of these competitions, I just expose myself to a larger number of people. And because sim racing is more accessible, you end up meeting or facing against like a lot of different personalities. And over time, as you want to, of course, you have to have the motivation to win. And because I was really motivated to win and to beat these people and to try and adapt very quickly, naturally my mindset changed along the line as well. I learned how to be more resilient. I learned how to sort of like just sort of pull everything together, even if I really can't take it anymore, just push through and fight and deal with these people. And then even after you've built up so much mental strength to beat these guys, even after you win, they'll still try and knock you down and
Yeah,
everything.
sure.
So it's another thing that you have to adapt to. But
Mm-hmm.
that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of sim racing, because you expose yourself to, you know, a number of people, number of competitors that you would never never be able
Mm-hmm.
to do so at in a real life scale, because geographically it's just not possible.
Mm.
So that's the I think, of course, people always say, oh, simulators nowadays and equipment nowadays, they're so realistic, they can help you
Yeah.
learn stuff very quickly to drive on the track as well. But the real value that they're missing is when you join these competitions, and how these these competitors shape you into a better athlete. Because I've seen a lot of drivers that
Dude.
I would say are slightly more capable than me,
Mm-hmm.
but the moment you tickle them a little bit in this mental aspect, they crumble. They can't take
Mm.
the abuse. They can't take how much workload is actually forced on you just to perform and stuff. And then after a while, maybe they put up with it for like half a year or whatever, and then after that they're like, guys, I gotta stop. This is taking too much
Yeah,
of my
dude.
mental strength, especially staying up at night doing these stuff anymore. You
Mm.
know, I'm gonna quit. I've actually had a lot of teammates that sold their equipment as competitions got harder, because they just couldn't
Could deal with
deal
it?
with the
Holy
pressure
shit,
anymore.
dude.
Yeah, it is very tough, because like I said, geographically you're just
Yeah.
fighting so much more people, right?
Mm.
And the amount of words, the amount of like competition that you're under, it takes a lot of mental strength. It doesn't just apply to sim racing. If you look at these Dota players
Mm-hmm.
and stuff,
Mm.
they always emphasize how important it is to have like a really strong, like your mental game has to be really strong
Yeah.
in esports in general. Doesn't matter what kind of esports you do.
Mm.
Uh, any sort of like, whether it's Counter Strike, whether it's Dota, whether it's League of Legends, these players will always tell you that they spend a lot of time with their mental game, because
Mm.
the amount that it extracts from you is just insane.
Yeah. I think.
So tell us, Mika, about I mean, you mentioned about your exposure, right? And
Mm.
the amount of competition that you go through to add to that mental toughness. Right? But
Mm-hmm.
for us to, maybe if you could share with us, like where does it come from for you, at least personally, the
Mm-hmm.
mental skills? Is it from parents? Is it from something you experience? Is there anything in particular that you draw from?
Uh, anything in particular? I would say no, because like when I started sim racing, I was very
Mm.
much like exactly like the people that I saw like fall. Like I have
Mm.
one bad race and I'm like, I don't want to do this thing anymore.
Mm.
I was very much like that when I started sim racing. But I don't know. I think slowly, as I joined more competitions, uh, I would say it's mainly. I would say I talked about it with a couple of my friends.
Mm.
It's this massive level of ego, but it's the good kind of ego. It's not the kind of
Mm.
ego where like you don't want to be wrong, but it's the kind of ego where you're like, no, I have to be better than this. There's like I have to be
Mm-hmm.
able to
Mm-hmm.
live with this. Yeah. So
Mm.
for me, it doesn't just apply to me doing sim racing competitions, but in every aspect of life. Whenever I
Mm.
start to get stuck with something, my mindset is always just like, no, there has to be a way. There's something that I can learn to bring myself just a tiny bit higher. So I don't know. I would say it's just the way I'm wired. I cannot stand not being good enough.
Mate, you
So yeah.
you are a total like incalculable misnomer. Like you wouldn't believe the number of people I know who are your age who are not, even the people like interns that I get in our
Mm.
teams in advertising and all that kind of stuff, who
Mm-hmm.
are not willing to put in the effort. Zero,
Yeah.
like they're like, no, fuck you, pay me. Then I'll do the effort part, and then you pay them, and then the effort part never comes.
Exactly.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Mm.
I'm just sort of like, okay, you know what? Like, this is weird as hell. Like, but like to hear you say that, I'm like, damn, man. Like, there's
Yeah.
something about there's
Because
something
I
about
have.
yeah, there's something about a
Mm-hmm.
hobby or a competition that drives
Mm-hmm.
people to be or try to be the best at what they do, or at least
Yep.
think about how to take the next step. Not even be the best, but take the next step. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Because I also have like.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and I get what you mean.
Yeah.
Like I also have a lot of friends, well, used to be my friends
Okay.
that with like the same level of ego as me, but the way we deal with our ego is very different. When I'm not good enough for something, I'm like, okay, yeah, there's no way that my level of performance is not high enough for this. And then I bring myself up to that level. But, these people that I used to know with the same level of ego as me, the moment they're faced with the same problem, they're like, there's no way I'm not good enough for this. Surely he's doing something different. Surely he's cheating. Surely he's blah,
Sure.
blah, blah, blah. And then
I see
all
that
all
one.
the talk starts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Two very different ways to approach it. And for me, every single aspect of my life, even like right now as I'm starting uni, any problem that I face, that's just how I deal with it. I look at it and then I look at myself and then I'm like, there's no way I'm not good enough for this. There's something that I can learn. So I would say it's just how I'm coded. Just this very what's the word? Very stubborn kind of like,
No,
sometimes
yeah,
because
for sure.
it's because sometimes even my dad is like, hey, some people are just not made for some things, and I'm like, yeah, that's true. I'm made for everything though, so like I don't know what you mean.
I love it.
So it's like, yeah, I'm just just
No, it's cool. It's cool
very
because
stubborn in that way.
I think that's amazing, right? Because it's not just your confidence. I think like you mentioned, I think your ability to condense it down to how you can make at each step be slightly better, right? In terms of improving stuff. I think maybe
Yeah,
that may be
exactly.
your strength and how you strive to continue to do better.
Yeah, I guess it's not throwing everything at the wall and see what sticks, but more so like, be analytical about the situation and going, okay, XYZ didn't work for me. So what
Yeah.
can I can do 2 or 3 things to make that better, or I can try one thing and make that better. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot of different ways to attack things, you know what I mean? But that's pretty cool stuff.
I
One thing I
mean, for
did
me,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, for me as well, the amount of skills that I picked up, like the fact that I'm really, because I also like you know sometimes some teams will commission me to do some graphic design work on Photoshop, and I only learned Photoshop because of racing, because I needed to create some
Oh
Wow,
livery.
good
my
Yeah.
on you.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah,
yeah,
because
dude.
when there were some competitions that I was joining, and then they were like, oh, if you don't have a custom livery, you can't register. And then I'm like, okay, cool, how do I make a custom livery? And then I see these forums, these YouTube videos, you have to spend like 6 hours making a livery on Photoshop. You got to 3D
Yep.
design everything.
Mm.
And then this is coming from someone who couldn't even get a PowerPoint slide to like look proper.
Yep.
But like I said, my mentality of just like, no, I have to learn how to do this. So because of that, now I'm really good at Photoshop, and I like, even some team, I still get some residuals where I just like create a whole social media pack for a team. They pay me a certain amount, and I just let them, use the just editable link, then they can work
That
on it. So
So you
yeah.
monetized it.
Yeah,
Damn.
monetize my skill. Went from not knowing, I didn't even know how to install Photoshop, to like now just monetizing off of it. That just shows like my range of like, okay, there's something I can do about this. So it applies to not just picking up a skill, like graphic design skill like that, but also a lot of times when I was racing, and then like, of course, funding is always the biggest problem,
Yeah.
right? And then I look around, and then people are like, oh, the only way you can get funding is racing in racing is through sponsorships. And I'm like, okay, whatever, right? If no sponsors are reaching out to me, I'm gonna create these sponsorship decks and stuff, reach out to them, connect with the right people. And then my first problem was, what even is a sponsorship deck? Like,
Yeah, what does it even look like, right?
yeah, what does it even look like? Like, is it an actual like deck? Do I have to print it out? I didn't know what it was. So I had to learn all these things. And then now I have a proper communication strategy, how to reach out to brands. Now I know if I want to reach out to brands, I have to have a campaign, go through a digital marketing agency and see like, hey, so I have this campaign that I want to do. This is how much I want to charge for it. You guys have the contacts for these brands and stuff. Here's the whole package. Reach out to them. We split it X amount. So now I have a
Dude,
proper way
I'm
of
not
doing
saying
it.
anything, but are you sure you want to go through university? Because
Yeah, dude, I
it's
think you're
covered a
ready.
lot of
Holy
stuff.
shit, dude. You
Yeah, exactly
basically
that.
learned whatever Josh and I do in like a year or less.
Yeah, and I
You
learned
spend
all
a
of that just
lifetime
in
doing
like
this stuff.
1 or 2 years, because like, yeah, it's just my pure drive to like, I wanted to be a racing driver, but I had to learn all these
Yeah.
little things. Of course, some racing drivers out there, they have people that they hire because they have the money, right? They have people, they hire people to just create these decks for them and stuff. I had to do everything the hard way, but
My goodness. Well
my
done.
mentality, I was able to do it. So yeah, I mean, my dad gives me the same stuff. He's like, you why do you want to take your degree, like, yeah, why not just take it when you're 30 or something, just so that you can have it, just do it part-time or whatever. But I
You know,
told him, I have the time
yeah.
now.
Yeah, you should do it now.
Yeah,
I
I have the
mean,
time now to do it and stuff. I mean, it's just good to have the degree at some point. But
Yeah.
the fact that I learned all of this before I even did my foundation means that now when I do my assignments and stuff, I'm even like
yeah,
in accounting and stuff. I'm like, oh, I've already learned this. Cool.
yeah, exactly. You know what? One of the greatest not so great stories that I saw in a YouTube video was Christian Horner's ascent to becoming a
Mm.
team boss. Right?
Yeah,
He,
I've actually listened to that whole, like every
yeah,
time I'm like studying or doing my assignments, I always listen to that podcast because like I like to, even when I go out for like my 5 kilometer runs, I put on like a Christian Horner podcast or a Lando Norris podcast, and I
yeah,
want to even the Zach Brown podcast because you can learn so much about
yeah, about how they
people.
did it.
Yeah, like for Russell and
Mm.
Norris, you learn about how they think as an athlete, and then when you listen to Zach Brown and Christian Horner, you learn about what they're like when they run a business. So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of these things, like Christian Horner, did a lot of the things that I'm doing now, which is like
Exactly.
when
When I
he's
saw that,
running
I was
his
like,
F3 team. Yeah,
yeah,
he used to be the person that was writing the checks, that was doing the
exactly.
invoices, that was pulling trucks, that was like driving the what do you call it, like driving the truck in and out of the garage. He did all of that as a team principal
Yep.
because he felt it was necessary, and I felt like, oh, when I was listening to that, I was like, oh, cool. So I'm already doing that, so I'm on the right track.
That's
My
crazy.
mentality is in the right place. It's really key. That's why Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, they emphasize a lot on mentality, because if you've got the right mindset in life,
Mhm.
you just like sort of float over everything. It's a really, I'm glad that I was sort of like hardwired in this
Yeah.
way, because it makes out, like, I definitely can't deny that it makes like a lot of things in my life, like even completely outside of racing, it makes it so much easier because my
Mm.
mind is just so versatile and so
Yeah.
capable to adapt to anything.
But you got like, most of what you have in life, you've got the blueprint already.
Mm.
Like Josh and I spent an entire career in advertising,
Yeah.
uh, doing exactly that, right? Instead of selling ourselves, we're just selling product. We're selling communication strategies for
Yeah.
products and all that. And like every single thing we do is sell, 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 right? Like
Yeah.
find the unique proposition, like why Mika
Mhm.
versus why Alistair versus why anything. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
so I think it's pretty. Oh, dude, you're blowing me away. I had no idea. I had no idea. Josh, one of those things where we've been really lucky. We haven't done many of these podcasts, but we
Mm.
had the guy we had at the beginning of the second set of 5 was a game developer who learned how to do it over MCO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now he's like the lead designer of a game company. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Why is it so simple? Why am I struggling? Why I spent 20 years in this stupid advertising job for?
Yeah.
But
Even for me, like, because I do a lot of self-reflection. I learned
sure.
when I was I think when I first joined Brabham, they taught a lot about in Brabham esports. They taught a lot about self-reflection,
Mm.
just to sort of bring yourself level, but to also know if you're lacking in a lot of departments. Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
some athletes, they it's very easy for them to think they're at the top of the world. Uh,
Mm.
and then you see it still at a high level where they reach a certain peak and then they just drop. You can see like footballers like Ben Arfa, like
Mm.
all these kind of players that look like they could be better than Messi and
But they just
Ronaldo.
never reached. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Even if they do reach it, it's 1 or 2 years you don't hear their names anymore.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
Who's got
you
staying
know,
power, right?
yeah. So with self-reflection, you can it helps ground you a little bit. Of course, self-reflection, you also learn, you also get to know, well, I really am better than a lot of people out there. But you also get to know the small things that you are lacking compared to the elites. So when I do a lot of self-reflection, I always look back at myself and then I'm like, okay, comparing to a lot of 20-year-olds out there, I've got it
Yeah.
pretty good. My way of thinking is pretty okay, gets me far in life. And then yeah, so it's
I think
and
you're on the right track, Mika, because
Oh yeah,
I
100%, dude.
but the best thing is like every time I do that self-reflection, I'm like, can't believe all this started just because like some sim racing team picked me up.
Yeah.
The way it snowballed is just insane, because I don't think I would have been able to tap into that part of myself. I wouldn't have
Mm.
realized like because before that, when I was 15 and 16, and I wasn't into sim racing at all, I was really struggling in school like a lot. I just could not like
Mm.
Mm.
I just could not grasp like anything from a book. But the moment I got into racing and I sort of tapped into this version of myself where my mindset is just a lot more versatile. Like even right now when I'm studying for accounting and for marketing and stuff in my uni, it's just, read it once, understand it, straight on. It's just like, learn it like straight away. So I feel like I would never have been able to tap into that version of myself if I didn't expose myself to this, whole world of sim racing. Because like, I just did it just to like, I just did this competition thing because like, oh, this competition I could win a PC, I could win a monitor, whatever. That's how it started. But I didn't know that I would learn so much about myself and evolve into, quite a, I would say, motivated and resilient person. So it's a great gift, really. You never really know what life brings you.
I gotta say it. I mean, for me, because I was always a dummy when I was growing up, so I could never really sort of like. I just wanted to do everything except study. And it's only
that's how I was as well.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I mean, like it took me a long time to get my life right. You know what I mean, in terms of all the things that I gone through, up until like 43, right? So, for me, was like the switch came on when I understood what I was supposed to do, like in my job, and when I took all the analytical view out of it, and I said, okay, you know what? There are things that I don't think I'm interested to know. But there are things that I know that if I'm not interested to know these things, at least at a cursory level, I'm not going to be able to apply that to the logic I have to create as a creative person, as a creative message developer, for example, or copywriter. And I realized that the A plus B's plus C's now make sense to me, when in the past they just wouldn't make sense at all, because I just could never get there without the application of this is the filter you have to look at everything through at, right? And I'm like, that this is your filter, man. Your hobby is now your sport, is now your filter for life. And it gives you great understanding of everything. And I'm absolutely blown away. I want to see whether I want to talk to Nakib now, and I want to talk to Alistair. I want to see like whether their heads are in the same place as your head right now. I mean, like, is it, or do you feel like they are?
I would definitely say maybe on some levels, yes. But the thing is like me and Nakib and Alistair did like this, when you want to talk about these kind of things, it's very much you sort of have to get really deep into the conversation to sort of like access it. But I can tell that I don't know much about them because I don't talk to them as much anymore. But generally the amount of people that I talk to in racing, often I don't really see this like sort of a reflection of my mentality in them. It's, for me, it's like very hard to see. It doesn't just, even when we're like not talking about racing stuff, and then like maybe they're talking about some sort of problem they're having with their life or their car or whatever, and then how they choose to navigate from that problem, it always makes me go, I would not have gone down that route. I would have still been thinking that, like if I was them, I would have been like, still a lot of stuff that I would still be trying to do. But that's me. I'm not gonna change how they think in life. I'm too self-involved.
No. I think it's not that at all. I don't think you are. For me, when I listen to you, I'm so amazed because I don't even hear the words of self-reflection from 20-year-olds. That's not.
I don't even hear it from the 24-year-olds I hang out with.
Exactly. And let me tell you something. I don't even see it from those who are in their mid-40s or even in their 50s. Because it's not easy for. I think for a lot of us. I mean, even for myself, I reflected on myself pretty late. I think like around in my 30s. So it's amazing for someone like you to be able to, and what you have found right through your passion and being able to hone in on self-reflection, how to improve at it. And like you mentioned it, right, it's so much more than just your passion and sim racing and now real life racing. It's every other facet in life that you can apply it to, right?
I've also have friends that run their own digital marketing agencies and stuff, and then I can see that they don't do a lot of self-reflection, because whenever they say, oh, there's a problem, this, blah, 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 and then I ask them, oh, well, okay, so what can you do? Because obviously you're limited on like staff or whatever, because when you're a small firm, you don't have a lot of people that you can hire, right? So I'm like, so what can you do on your end? And they're like, oh, I don't really know what I'm lacking. And then I'm like, I'm sitting there in front of the table, and I'm like, how do you not know? How do you not self-reflect? And then I'm like, it's okay, whatever. Okay, and then I diagnose the problem for them, and then I'm like, okay, so this is what you're missing. And then they're like, oh yeah, but I don't have anyone that can do that. And then I'm like, then you do it, smart ass. And then I'm just like, but and then of course after I tell it to them, and then they're like, oh, but it's gonna take so long to learn. And then I would tell them, dude, like I learned Photoshop in like a small amount of time just so that I could do this one thing. If I can do it, you can do it. And then they're like, oh, but I don't really think that I can. And then I'm like, just try, god damn it, like. And then but the fact that I had to like sort of not only pick out the problem but pick out the solution as well, it kind of shows that like not a lot of people out there they self-reflect, and then they don't really want to delve into sort of uncertain regions in their life. Like for me, when I wanted to join that sim racing competition and then it said I needed to create my own livery, I could have just easily gone, oh, I don't know how to do Photoshop, I'll just look at joining another competition. I could have gone that route, but I went the long way, and I'm like, I want to join this. I'll learn everything I need to know about creating a livery in Photoshop. And then and then now that's a skill that I carry on, because from learning Photoshop, I learned how to make social media posts. I learned a lot of different things and stuff, and then it carried on very long. And that's just two ways you can see a problem. Some people, they're like, oh, I don't have the skills for this. I don't have the people with the skills for this, so I can't do it. But then there's people like me who are like, oh, I don't have the skills for this. I'm gonna learn everything I need to learn to do it, because there's a gap that I need to fill. So it's crazy. I would say because of course I do a lot of self-reflection, and whenever I think about this part about myself, I always feel like very grateful. I always make sure that I actively try and think this way, because I fear that over time, of course, life is life. Sometimes you meet your girlfriends and stuff, or your family members, they change around a little bit. Your agendas tend to change in life. The way you think, what seems right or okay, tends to change over time. So whenever I self-reflect, I always try to tell myself that this is something that I have to really keep bringing to myself, like in every version of myself that I will grow into. Because even if I don't do racing anymore, I can learn a lot that can bring me very far in life just by having this mentality. So and it's something I don't see in a lot of people. Like when I meet like some girls on dates, or when I meet some guys that want to join my football club or my racing team or whatever, and then they're sort of, I wouldn't say lack of ambition, but the limitation to their ambitions is just like sort of very staggering to me. Because there's just not because of how shocking it is, but just because how many people there are that just sort of they just kind of like go with however everybody's going in life. It's not a bad thing. It's just that it makes someone like me, someone with my mentality, sort of like shine out a little bit, which is a good thing. It's something I like about myself, even though it might bring some problems with me in my life. Sometimes
I think the only thing people could levy on you is just maybe a bit too confident, but like
I get that a lot all the time.
It doesn't
but
matter.
Also like with sorry to
when
cut
you
you
back
off,
that shit up, you're fine. You know what I mean? Like it's not a problem.
I mean, like,
I don't think it's a problem either.
I mean, with like my previous relationship, the biggest problem she had with this was just like she sort of like said I didn't know where to stop. Because like whenever I couldn't do something, most people would just be like, this is out of my hands. But I would keep trying to learn. I would spend nights just learning how to code, even like, just get like just to solve one small problem. And then I'd always get like sort of like negative words such as like oh, you don't really know when to stop. You don't really know like when your limitations have limits, and then you just keep going. And then I'm like, but then I come out of it with like new skills, so like I don't care, like screw it. So like some people, they may see it as a problem, but if it's only a problem if you choose to see it as a problem. It's like perception is still a pretty big thing when it comes to that at the end of the day.
Okay, so I got one question that I kind of I actually before I get into that question. For Josh's reference, Alistair Young is Alex Young's son, and he's also heavily into the scene as well, right? So he does a lot of racing and all that as well. So I mean, it's an inside joke, but in my old man group where we do ACC every once in a while, I talked about going to Hot Rocket Racing Club just to see whether we could get like lectured by Alex for an hour, so I can ask him all sorts of stupid questions, like, and learn from his experience, right? Because I saw one of his documentary videos that I think he did locally, posted it on Facebook, and
Mm-hmm.
he had some pretty interesting takes. Like, like, how do you go to Minardi? And a lot of people say, like, oh, how do you go to Minardi and blow so much of Malaysia's money? And his thing was just like, yeah, that money was just barely keeping them afloat. So
Yeah.
what part of that money went to my development? And I was like, oh, that's true.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but the question I did want to ask you though was, a long time ago, I ran into, they called this guy the tandem assassin. He's like one of Malaysia's greatest, if not greatest, drift drivers,
Uh-huh.
um, Tunku Jan. So
Mm.
he was at the time head of the race rally research team, and he came up with that little brainchild and all that kind of stuff. I ran into him, I fangirled a little bit, and I realized I was just not in the same league, right? I can't have the same conversations as him. But what was your experience like? Because I remember you told me you were his partner, right?
Yeah.
In the
So I
endurance
had him
cup.
as a yeah, I had him as my teammate for 4 races back in 2022 in the middle of the year. And I would say I learned quite a lot from him as well. I mean, to be fair, he kind of like shocked me as a person at first because from afar, he seems like this very intimidating, don't talk to me kind of guy.
Really?
Uh, yeah, to me, he seems like that at first. Or of course, when he's talking to like people he doesn't know, he looks very nice and stuff. But at least for me, when I'm racing against him, I always see the side of him that's only talking to his mechanics and engineers and stuff. And he's got this really strict face with the I'm gonna kill you kind of eyes and stuff. So I've always been like, God dang, this guy is scary. I'm not gonna try to talk to him, man.
The
Like,
intensity level must be high.
yeah, and of course, like the guy, he's got so much achievements to his
Mm.
name. So to me, I felt like he would have seen me as like such a small person,
Mm.
and I felt like he probably wouldn't have even seen like if it was even worth his time to be my teammate. So when I was put into that team with him, I was scared. I was like, God damn, like this guy's been racing his whole life, so many achievements, now partnered up with some sim racer that's only done like 7 races up to that point. you know I'm like, this guy's gonna hate being my teammate, man. But he really shocked me as a person because he was the complete opposite. He was really, he was giving me advice every single second that he could. He was really helping me out. He was like, hey, if you're struggling with this, it's probably because you're really thinking of it in this way. Da, 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 da. If you're feeling pressure in a certain way, just know that the pressure is not coming from us. Pressure is probably
Mm.
coming from you. We're not putting any sort of pressure on you. Just sit in the car, learn, and we'll go from there. So I learned, I would say, for my real car racing career, if just the real life stuff, I learned the most from Tengku Jan, because of course he's got a lot of experience and he teaches quite a lot, but also because he's also very nurturing as a coach, or as a teammate. And the fact that he's so how to say, so down to earth as well. The guy's bloody rich as well. So so the fact that he's so down to earth and he's really, really willing to always help. Yeah, to me, maybe it's just because I'm the kind of person where to me kindness really like stands out, and to him, yeah, to me, he's that kind of person. And having him as a teammate was, I would say, a very good blessing, because it sort of helped me to just see sort of like car racing as like not this, not everybody is that intimidating, because I in my first rookie year, I was used to people his age with his experience talking bad about me because I came from
Mm.
a video game background.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I was his teammate, he's the kind of person that's like, oh, I spend a lot of time on the sim
Oh,
myself, and
Josh got dropped all of a sudden. Oh, he'll be
yeah.
back. Continue, continue.
Yeah, but because Tegujan spends a lot of time on the sim, so he's always
Yeah,
like,
I'm sure he
oh
does.
yeah, I spend a lot of time on the sim as well. Respect what you do, and then he's like, but you gotta understand there are some differences. This is what I
Mm.
think about this and that and stuff. So he's really helpful in that kind of sense, and I can definitely see why he's achieved so much in his career. Because he's also got that. He's very hardworking, I would say. Just spends a lot of time trying to get things right. which is a really good trade of his, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's great. I mean, he doesn't remember me anymore. I mean, we ran into each other so many times on tracks and all that, but it's not like I'm anybody less. So it's just this fat dude taking up people's oxygen. I wanted to know. Okay, so we now know that you're attending for your business degree, or is it?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and but I feel like if you had like, what would be the pinnacle for this? Like, how far do you want this racing thing to carry you? But you know, a lot of people have very, okay, I'm good at it now, but I'm not sure I'm gonna be good at it later. But like, are you looking at
Mm.
like, oh, you know, I'll be like, you know, Malaysia's first like, yeah, I don't know, GT3 or GTE champion or something like that, or what do
Mm.
you? I mean,
For me, my biggest goal would be to race in the 24 hours of Le Mans.
damn,
But once I break that barrier, the goal will change to winning Le Mans. So,
sure, yeah.
so yeah. But
You want
there's
to
a lot
win
of
the
different
class
ways you
victory,
can
or you
get
want
in.
the
Sorry,
you want the class
what?
victory, or you want the overall?
Ah, I mean, once I get class, I'm gonna want overall.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
yeah. So, but first hurdle is getting there in the first place, and there's other ways you can get there. If you know, one day I get picked up by really, if I can showcase myself really well, I can get factory backing, and then once you get factory backing, it's all about how good you are from there, right? But if you don't go down that route, because when you wanna, like for example, when Porsche signs their factory drivers, they often choose them from Europe, right?
Yeah.
So unless you get noticed in a different way, because the only way you can be a factory driver is to be noticed is one, but to stand out against everybody else that they also notice is another thing. But if I can get in that way, then that's my ticket to racing and winning at Le Mans. But if I can't do it that way, another option is to have a business that brings in enough money for me to fund my own team and then
Love
race in Le
that.
Mans that way, and then try and get a class victory there. Because if you get a class victory there, and you show how good you are as a driver, that's a way for you to get noticed by Porsche.
Yeah.
If you can win, if you beat a Porsche car with your own team, they're gonna take notice, and then if they think you're a good driver, they're gonna take you on. So if I can't get it, if I can't get in by being noticed, then I'm gonna get in by having a successful enough business. So that's how I'm looking at it. So to me, it's like definitely something I'm telling myself that I'm going to achieve it at some point, even if I'm like 35 or 45 at that point. I'm going to race at Le Mans at some point. It's just how I do it is the big question. Whether it's with my own money, like through my own company, or whether it's being noticed. I'm gonna do it at some point. So I think that's why I'm also studying business, because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, it's good to have your own business anyways. But that's the only way you can fund yourself into racing, because no job is gonna pay you the amount of money it costs
No.
to to race at Le
Unfortunately,
Mans.
no.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
even if you're like, because there are some CEOs that race in the gentleman cars at Le Mans and stuff. Like Michael Fassbender, he
Yes.
makes a lot of money from acting to be
Oh,
able to fund his racing
but I tell
career.
you, man, like that was heartbreak because I was 4 hours to
Yeah,
go and he spun the last turn. Was it last
yeah,
turn? And he
yeah,
smashed the car. I was
exactly.
like, oh god, come on, bro.
Yeah. So I mean, the only way you can get a job like that goes to show, because he's the only like Hollywood actor that's actually gone to Le Mans and done it, right? That
Competed,
goes to
yeah,
show like how hard it is. Like the
yeah,
only job you can get that can fund your way into Le Mans is if you're an A-list Hollywood actor,
pretty
and
much.
there's no way
Crazy.
that is not an accessible job to like even like 0.01% of the population. So the easiest way for you to get in is to have a business that brings in enough revenue for you to pay for a spot in Le Mans, and then you go from there. So that's my goal. I have to get creative. I have to analyze the market, see what kind of business would thrive by the time I want to get into Le Mans. Because like if you look at 10, 20 years ago, I wouldn't say it's easy, but like there are people out there that made like really hundreds of millions just because they came up with like a really clever banking software, sold it off, and then now they get like millions and millions every year. So back then competition was a lot smaller because the whole internet, the whole tech thing was like so
True, true.
new.
Yeah.
But now it's so competitive. Everybody had like whatever idea you come up with, everybody's already come up with it. You got to
Yeah.
think of something different. If you want to really break that market. and especially with AI coming through now, wow, it's even harder for you to come up
True.
with something unique, you know. So
Yeah.
but but I trust, if because even 2-3 years ago we didn't know about this whole AI chat GPT thing, you know.
Yeah.
So if I'm smart enough with the way how I with how I look at the market, I might be able to come up with something that's going to be big in the future. And then if I can profit off of that, that's my ticket to having
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
company that can fund me into Le Mans, you know. So that's how I'm seeing it. That I'm being patient with it as well, because the way I look at it, 2-3 years ago, nobody knew anything about ChatGPT, and now it's the biggest thing out there.
Yep.
Everybody's scared of AI taking over jobs and stuff, and that's just in 2-3 years.
Yeah.
So 2-3 years from now, the world could change even more. So
True.
so for me, I want to put myself in that position where I can make a lot of money if I put myself in the right spot. So that's like at the end of the day, for me, it's like make a lot of money, race in Le Mans. That's just it.
I love it.
Make
I
a lot
love
of
it.
money, race in Le Mans. That's it.
That's the
Nothing
goal.
else.
Okay, so Josh, do you have any final thoughts or
No, no,
final
no.
question?
Just maybe a final remark. I think more on my side. It's I'm very in awe, and I like how
I
singular
mean,
you're mature beyond what any normal
I'm so
20.
glad somebody talked more than me this entire podcast. Normally I go through verbal
Yeah.
diarrhea
No, but
often, but like,
but
yeah,
yeah, but Mika, all the best. I mean, I think shoot for the stars.
Yeah.
Try your best, because you're right. The rest of us, desk monkeys, can never dream something.
Nah.
No, but it's good
I'm
to
still
it's good to
dreaming,
have.
still dreaming.
Oh, but thank you.
Yeah.
I think it's. I mean, I've appreciated this whole thing. I like the time that you guys spent to set this whole thing up,
Hey, no worries, man.
and I'm really happy to be a part of it. Thank you for having me, guys. Really
Hey, no
appreciate
worries,
it.
man. It's a pleasure having you. We don't have that big an audience, but I mean, having you on, I feel like, yeah, trust me. Like, I think people are going to be interested to know what you have to say. And honestly, like, it's mind blowing. Like, you're almost a complete adult.
Yeah, I get whenever, because like I like to do this, like I get invited to do podcasts every now and then, or
Yeah.
do like videos every now and then they sort of get to know this side about me. I mean, I like to do it because in terms of because as a racing driver, you gotta try your best to become a become a public figure.
Yep.
So I just do as many of these media stuff that I can, just so that my name is just spread out around there as much as possible. And of course, when I talk to them and when they find out this side about me, I always get the same thing. They're like, you're 20, you look 18, but you think like you're 40,
Yep.
40 years
You
old
feel like you're 40.
with a lot of business experience.
Yeah.
So
Oh, don't
yeah,
worry,
I mean,
man. I'm sure you'll get at least 3 more friends from the 3 people that actually do watch this podcast. I'm kidding. But thank you so much for being on today, dude. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank
Thank
you,
you for having me. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, John.
Hey,
Really
no worries,
appreciate it.
man.